This conference will now be recorded.
Welcome everyone to our Lunch and Learn with Mike Stevens, who will be talking about tech in research. I'm going to hand over straight away to Mike. Thank you, Mike.
Okay. Thanks, Lucy. Right. I think some of you might have seen most of this already. It's pretty much as is the versions on the Insight Platform site. So if you've watched that, you can tune out because there's only a few small updates that I've made to this. But it is a kind of pretty fast-moving space. But look, right, before we start, I've got 30 minutes. There's about an hour and a half of content in here, so I'm going to have to go fast. But really, really quick pitch for some stuff that I think you'll find useful and that I'm trying to sell. So this is a free event that's running next week, and we do these quite often on Insight Platforms. There's a load of great tech platforms. There's some Qual stuff on here, Recollective, Discuss.io, Qualsy, some other companies presenting their tech. I'm also going to do a few more trends and other kind of capability sessions. So this is free. You can sign up on Insight Platforms anytime. It's all next week. Everything's on demand if you don't get to see it live. Now, the other big thing that should have a more coherent pitch for is the e-learning side of Insight Platforms. So it's called the Academy, and we do a load of live and on-demand training things. Actually, this week, ICG member Dan Young led this fantastic session on insight synthesis. So these are paid courses. They're not expensive. They're only like £99 each. But so there's two reasons. One is if you are interested in it being an instructor, so teaching a course in the academy, drop me a line. A lot of it's kind of like digital tech-enabled stuff, but let me know if you're interested, and we can have a chat about potentially hosting something. The other thing that might be relevant for you or your clients potentially is I'm revamping this thing called the Research Technology. I don't like the word boot camp. If anybody's got a better word for this, then it's a certification. So different modules about research technology, and you watch the videos on demand. You come along to the live Q&A sessions if you want to. So this will be rolling out properly in September. And we're doing another one for what we call Research Essentials. And this is for people who are like brand new into client research teams or brand new graduates in research who don't know anything. And for people who are in the industry but don't need to do research. So there's a lot of salespeople, technical people who need this stuff. And it's going to be things like what's market research all about? What's UX research, customer experience, surveys, all this sort of stuff. So that also is in development. About half of these are ready and published. Half of them are in the backlog. That's what that is behind me. But they're going to be online soon. So if you know clients who might find that useful, or if you or anybody else that you know, then please send them to the Insight Platforms Academy. Right. Okay. That's it. Generative AI. What the hell is this stuff? Right. So everybody's been talking about ChatGPT. I'm a bit over it, to be honest. There's just so much in the LinkedIn feed that's just clogged up about ChatGPT. But what is it? Right. Let's go back to basics. There's been a lot of AI stuff in research for a while, and the difference between what this new stuff, the generative AI, and what the kind of existing stuff, analytical AI, I guess we can call it, just to give you some examples. So we've been using AI for text analytics, for coding verbatim responses, for transcribing, audio from videos into text. Lots of examples that you can actually use, just plug in. This is a tool you can just plug into Zoom. You don't need a research specific tool. So this is Grain. There's dozens of others. A lot of social listening uses AI for the language side of things. For predicting trends, you've probably seen the stuff around Black Swan, the work they do with Pepsi, that type of thing. So this is all using AI. Phil, I think I saw in the audience, so Inca is a great little startup for conversational AI surveys and kind of qualitative discussions at scale. And it's used also for things like image analytics, so figuring out what's the brands that are showing up in social media, the movements that people are doing, part of a group. Company that used to be known as Big Sofa is now Livestream, does the sort of video analytics AI for figuring out what's going on when people are doing they're cooking at home, where they're preparing different routines, their makeup, all that sort of stuff. Excuse me. And emotion analytics. So these are things like facial coding, which has had a bit of a bad rep recently, but also like measuring your pulse and your heart rate, and various other proxies to understand engagement on an emotional level. So all of that sort of AI stuff, that's all being used widely in research right now. It's not really the scope of what we're talking about now. Generative AI are these new things like ChatGPT. There are lots of other examples I'll show you, but ChatGPT is the kind of the most famous and the most widely adopted. They use inputs to build a model that then creates an output of some kind. A lot of it's text, so it's text in, text out, but images, video, audio, and other stuff. So ChatGPT, this is the interface. You've probably had to play. You give it what's known as a prompt, an input, and then it spits something out. So, this is there's so many ridiculous ones online, but write a biblical verse in the style of the King James Bible about taking a sandwich out of a video player. Just crazy stuff like that, and it does it coherently, does it kind of convincingly. Actually, this text generation stuff's been around for quite a long time. The Associated Press have been using automatic sort of creation of articles for reporting on earnings, earnings reports, public companies, even some sports reporting. So the natural language generation has actually been around for a little while. The new stuff is taking the language inputs and turning it into other outputs. So image generation. This comes from a tool called Midjourney, where your prompt, in this case, a sad old woman astronaut in a room, it's raining, and some other parameters there, and it spits out an image like this. Now, I think Getty Images has just launched a big lawsuit against one of these producers, saying that it's copyright infringement because they're basically taking their images. This is going to be a hell of a scrap as people try and assert copyright in this. Anyway, the other ways, not just images, not just text, you can generate audio. And this, I don't know if you can hear my speaker, but this is that was a synthesized version of Gwyneth Paltrow, and so generating almost natural sounding audio content from text inputs. You can, there's tools online that allow you to do this. Generating synthetic videos. This is a platform where you can kind of upload your text, and then you get these spooky looking avatars, speaking your text. I find them a bit just deep in the uncanny valley right now. They're not quite natural yet, but they're going to get there. And the technology, the models that underpin this are really two sides of the same coin: natural language processing and generation. And what powers GPT, which is the model underpinning ChatGPT, are these large language models. And they're huge algorithms trained on billions and billions of text inputs to process text, to find patterns, and then to make predictions about what comes next. Now, this is the most important thing to remember about ChatGPT: is it's a prediction machine. Okay, your brain's almost inevitably filled in the final word in this nursery rhyme. So you make a prediction based on all of your learning, all of the content you've been exposed to since childhood. This is how our brains work, and this is how a lot of the AI models work. Guessing. It's basically educated guesswork as to what the next word in a sequence will be, with all of these billions and billions of text inputs from across the internet. So they're constantly guessing. What they do is they process large amounts of text, they make predictions. Okay, don't be put off by the complexity of these charts. There's a very simple story here. On the left hand side, this is really just showing, from the very dawn of what we call artificial intelligence in the 50s. These both come from economists, by the way. Just the exponential growth in computational power and complexity. So it's going up and to the right, but it's on an exponential curve. So the number of calculations that are being done to generate these things are just going through the roof all the time. On the right, this is how quickly these different technologies meet or exceed human comparison performance. So if you look at something like the language understanding model, the most advanced one there, GLUE, on the far right, it basically took about 2 years to become better than human performance. That is an astonishing rate of improvement and learning. So very, very fast learning. How these things work is you give them a text input, which is called a prompt. The language model that we've just been describing, figuring out this whole prediction guesswork machine, what's the word that's going to come next in the sequence, then spits out an output. So the text output based on the prompt input. It could be another type of output, which could then feed into creating a video, a piece of music, whatever, the different types of output is, the images that you get from Midjourney or DALL-E, those types of tools. It's it's a kind of numeric representation of the text. But that's basically how these things work. One final bit before we get into some good examples. Models versus application. Okay, ChatGPT is an application. It's a product that sits on top of the model, which is GPT-3. Okay, actually 3.5, I think. But GPT-3 is the large language model that OpenAI has created. There have been a lot of existing tools that have been built using that model. And when ChatGPT was launched, it completely took a lot of the existing companies by surprise who'd been using the GPT model to do things like write blog articles, create marketing copy. They all saw their supplier, the model supplier, OpenAI, suddenly create this consumer-facing product and went, what the hell are you doing? Because that's our business. So it's a messy, messy environment. But GPT-3 and 4, as it's coming, are the kind of the underlying models. There are others. Google's got this thing called Lambda. There are others from from different AI outfits that are kind of going to be coming out to compete as well. The products that sit on top, things that you might have heard of, like Jasper, which is a copywriting tool, and other applications there for all these different outputs. Okay, I'm going quite fast. I'm sorry. I wanted to get onto the research stuff because that's all quite generic. This really is about how might this play out in research and insights. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through 10 phases, slightly kind of square peg and round hole in a couple of places, but it's a process flow that should be familiar to most people, which is starting from desk research to go into a proposal, generate hypotheses, do some qual, do some quant, and then report and an output. I've used a couple of tools here that I have, desktop tools. I use Notion, which is I don't even know how to describe it, but basically I run the business on it. It's a project management platform, note-taking, databases, customer management, but it's got GPT embedded in it. And you'll see some examples of how it works because I can say, write a blog article on X and it'll do me a draft. The other tool that I've used is this for what's called stable diffusion, and that is an image generating thing. This is an app that is just a desktop app for the Mac. So this is a free tool. So you basically put in your prompt, you come out with an image. Now, how might we use these tools in the desk research phase of a proposal? Imagine that we're doing some work for a spirits business and they want to come up with some new ideas, new concepts for ready mixed tequila products. Okay. I picked the thing that was the most disgusting thing I could imagine. Anyway, imagine going to Google, you're doing some desk research, you want to win the brief, you want to find out what's the top 5 brands. Google, gives you a little research project, it highlights something, and then you dig around, you find the answer that you want. This is me asking the same question of Notion AI, GPT, which is actually underneath it. So you type it in, and then it comes back with a natural language response. So it's generating, the generative AI is writing this stuff for you. So it's told me in a very, very straightforward way. It's like, okay, that's kind of easier than the process flow and the workflow on Google. So lots of ways in which it can be used for that. Now, I'm on to writing the proposal, and the way that these things work actually is the more specific you can be in your prompt. So the thing that you feed in, the garbage in, garbage out rule, the more detailed and specific you can be, the better the output's going to be. So this is a brief, a prompt that I gave it to say, write me an outline structure for a research proposal with these components. So, include qual, idea generation, quant survey. And this is what it came out with. Not bad as a first kind of structure. And this is where I think the initial wins are going to be for people is helping formulate some thoughts, the scaffolding around which you're going to plan for things, not actually doing everything for you. But then I wanted to go deeper into a specific area. So I've given it another brief, a prompt to say, write the introduction, okay, and describe, the market, key customer personas, the leading brands, that sort of thing. So this is, I've got the skeleton outline, and then I'm actually saying within each of these, write me some copy. And then, it kind of does a passable job. It's writing out stuff that I could adapt or I could then go and edit and put into a proposal. So, there's potentially quite a lot of time saving going on here. Next up, so we won the job. We want to start building some hypotheses. Now, the eagle-eyed will notice that those poor people in the bar have got like fins and 7 fingers and weird stuff. This is what you get out of these image generation tools if you're not careful. So, the prompt I gave it was just a group of people in a posh cocktail bar in London nighttime, and this is what it gave. I haven't figured out how to stop them looking like, unfortunate genetic experiments. But anyway, there are better ways to do this. But you can generate hypotheses using the language models for all sorts of different things. So you might say, who might the different types of user be? Who are the different, what are the different needs? Come up with even generate some kind of concept ideas. So there's lots of ways in which this can be used for brainstorming. And this is another big use case, I think. So I fed it this brief, describe 5 barriers why young people might not want to buy ready mixed cocktails. And, it's kind of obvious. It's not difficult if you sit down and think about it. But, so they might not have availability, price, limited choice. But then maybe there's something else here, perceived stigma. It's like, okay, maybe there is something in that that's a little bit kind of different, and we can explore that. You can go and dig deeper. So, generating hypotheses for, your research framework. Then I fed it the brief to say, come up with 10 brand names for a ready-mixed tequila product. And, actually, these things sound as awful as I'm sure they would taste, but, it's a start. And if you're talking about idea generation, brainstorming, trying to come up with, lots of stuff, you're just flinging at a wall, this is not a bad partner to have, even if some of these things you just, you chuck them straight out. But, these are some brand names that it's come up with for this ready-mixed tequila product. Now, we're going to design some research here, and I have now fed my language model with this prompt to say, I'm going to run some groups, and with this target audience on this topic, write me a discussion guide and include these different bits, warm-up questions, projective techniques, implicit needs, that sort of thing. And this is what it came up with. Don't read it too closely because we don't have the time, but it's actually, it's not that bad. I mean, it's a start. I mean, honestly, like if you're a real research expert, you're just not, you're not going to be that impressed. But it's a decent start, to get you kind of 50% of the way there to start drafting something. It's really good for the blank sheet of paper terror. So if you've got this kind of like white sheet, you don't know what to do with it. Now, in the month since we first actually did this session, there's been a lot of innovation in the space, and Wholefish, which is a kind of an agile surveys tool, has come out with this, survey generator using AI. So effectively, not just for the qual that we saw about there, for the quant as well, feed in the the topic, the prompt that you want your survey to be about, and it will generate the output. I didn't have time to actually create one. But there's another one. This is from Question Pro. And again, this stuff is very early stages. And to be honest, I think this is kind of winging it a bit, because this is probably just searching through all the previous questions that included the word Soccer World Cup rather than actually meaningfully generating ideas. But you can see how this stuff is going to go into the survey building tools to automatically start generating surveys based on inputs. This is a kind of qual usability research tool, UX research platform called Hubble. And the same thing. Their aim is to get more people in design and product management roles, non-research experts doing research. So you can't see this because it's a bit blurry, but the idea is people enter their thing and go, I'm trying to understand, the barriers to users doing whatever in my product, and it'll spit out and go, okay, ask these types of questions and do it in this way. So guiding people who are not that expert in research is going to be a big use case for it as well. Using these image things for projective. So again, don't judge my output on this, but imagine you've got a bunch of consumers coming into a discussion. You might give them homework before to say, use these image generation tools to create a mood board that expresses how you feel, because people are not that comfortable drawing or creating their own thing. So, how might I feel on a night out? Well, I feel like I'm entering the gates of hell. And then maybe I'll start to get a little bit more confident. And then, oh, look, I've got my ready mix tequila in me, and I'm off, I'm dancing. So, there's ways in which these things could be used creatively. Now, potentially giving people a brief to say, okay, use these tools to go and create an image that is your ideal product. Now, this is very early days, but there's going to be more kind of refined versions of this coming down the line. So, this is my ideal kind of ready mix tequila cocktail experience. Now, take this a step further and you start to feed the hypotheses that we've come up with earlier for kind of brand names. We can take them, we feed them back in and go, okay, come up with a concept description that fits that brand name that we generated a couple of steps earlier. So imagine that, we've got a product for ready mix tequila. We want the ingredient, flavor profile, the key benefits for whatever it is, tequila go-go or tequila time. This is all exactly as was created by the AI. So just gave it that brief, added the brand name, and it spits these things out. Now, again, don't worry too much about reading closely, but it's kind of not bad. It's a bit kind of bland and banal, but it did it reasonably, decent first pass for all these different things. Now, what is also likely to happen with this kind of generative AI stuff, these large language models, is quite rapid advancement of these conversational surveys and the robot moderators. This is like qual. I know this is really terrible language for people. It's like red rag to a bull, but it's qual at scale. So unstructured, large scale discussions that can happen because you've got AI analyzing the responses on the fly, and then surveys that are less of a straitjacket because you've got a more natural interaction and a conversational interface. So if anybody saw this, I've been talking about this since last summer actually when they published it, but this was the guy who runs the Google Lambda model, which is the competitor to OpenAI. And he described an amazing use case or a brief that he gave to the AI to solve or to try and second guess the emotions that were happening. 3 children in a playground, 1 girl and 2 boys, and the one boy gives a flower to the girl. The girl screws it up and throws it away, and he asks the AI, "What do you think's going on in the mind of boy number 2?" I'm kind of abbreviating this, but the AI says, "I think boy number 2 smiled because he's secretly pleased that the girl rejected boy number 1." It's this kind of like secondary reasoning, emotional intuition that comes from a language model like this. I mean, that blew my mind, because the potential to really power up the lightly automated qualitative research or the kind of conversational surveys that that Inca and others are doing is very, very real, and there's going to be big advancements here. Even things like putting an avatar on the front of this, so people are actually having more of a natural conversation, a little bit like that movie Her. I don't know if you remember the Joaquin Phoenix where he falls in love with his phone operating system, but it's actually a much better film than it sounds. But okay, right, one step beyond this actually is imagine if we could create robot respondents and have an army of robot respondents responding to surveys. It's not actually in the realms of science fiction. There's a lot of this synthetic data is being generated for things like testing or training AI models for testing security, for compliance, if you need to kind of make copies of data but you don't want the real data. So there's lots of generating of synthetic data, which is basically almost like a digital twin of a person, if you can imagine. Now, there's a company in Canada called Persona Panels, which is starting to build the ability to do effectively, predictive surveys that don't need fresh respondents, because you've got so much data on how people would answer that you can test things in this kind of AI sandbox. Now, there's going to be a lot of skepticism around this. I've actually got a demo with these guys next week, so I'll know a bit more. But if you look at what Kantar's done, they've done something like 250,000 link tests over the last, 40, 50 years. It's a phenomenal database. And what that's allowed them to do is to build this product called Link AI. And that's a predictive ad test. So you upload your creative, it uses all the learnings that have been applied from the last half century, and it spits out some diagnostics that say, tweak this, don't do that. This is likely to be in the kind of top quartile, whatever. You can see a demo of that on the Insight Platforms website, actually. Now, this is a really big use case, and I think this is one that you'll like if you haven't seen it in action already, because it is it's actually something that's been in place for a little while. Things like Tableau, and I think Zappi has certainly had this in the past, where you can train the natural language generator to write commentary on quant data charts. So if you've got a concept test, you've got a brand tracker, if it's data that is kind of in the same structure each time, you can get automatic commentary writing to go, this is the most unique of the concepts we tested, or nothing happened for the last 3 quarters in the brand tracker, or whatever. But it's kind of structured commentary on top of quant data. Now, the cool thing is these language models are now able to synthesize the content of qualitative interviews. So this is like another UX research platform called Ballpark, but it's a company called Yabble out of New Zealand that has this summarized tool, actually using the GPT-3 model, but you can feed in long-form qualitative transcripts. So, you think way back to the start, you use some of that stuff that we've got for the automatic transcription of a Zoom interview. You upload the transcript into something like Yabble Summarize, and then you get the key themes, a synthesized thing that goes, this is what's going on. You get 10 interviews, you get a kind of nice summary across them. Field Notes, I know some of you have used, is a great mobile video feedback platform for Qual, and the next release will actually have this built in, where each of the videos will have this tiny little AI-based summary. So you'll be able to get, rather than kind of combing through loads and loads of video content, you'll be able to get a nice little summary that's written to say, what was this clip all about and what were they talking about? That to me is potentially a game changer for a lot of Qual research. This Speak AI is another tool. They've got more structured kind of interrogation. So you've got sort of 4 or 5 different prompts where you can ask it to say, summarize the kind of the top 3 insights that came out, what are the key action items, that sort of thing. This is where we're going to see a lot of work over the next few years. I think the automatic summarization, it's going to get more and more reliable. Right, knowledge management, and this is really, imagine that you've got all of the research you've ever done, access to all your data, and you can just ask the robot questions for it. So in enterprise search using generative AI is really big. These are a lot of the companies that are doing it for other stuff outside of research. But this week, this is old headline actually. So now you've seen yesterday Microsoft was releasing its Bing search thing with GPT. Market Logic is a company that makes these huge knowledge management platforms for research and insights teams. So Coke, Mondelez, they all use this platform for putting all of their reports, all their social listening, all of their syndicated stuff in one place. They are going to be releasing this generative AI model that says people can interrogate in natural language to go, tell me everything we know about youth consumers of Fanta in Latin America, blah, blah, blah. You can ask it questions in real time, and it will synthesize the results, but also put that into other people's apps, so things like Slack and Salesforce and those kind of tools. Right, What's wrong with this stuff? Quite a lot, actually. You need to be skeptical. You need to be careful because it's a very convincing bullshitter. Okay. Remember early on we asked it what was the market share of the top tequila brands in the UK. Ask it twice, comes up with a totally different answer. But again, just as convincingly. So it is not to be relied on for a lot of factual stuff. There's a lot of teething trouble there. So be very careful. The next thing is turbocharging fraud. If you haven't seen this, this is fantastic. This is some stuff that Innovate MR and Opinion Route did with interviews with real panel fraudsters. Honestly, some of the panels are getting like 50% fraud rates or dodgy data rates rather than kind of outright fraud. But there's a huge amount of fraud out there. It's a big thing. You imagine now they use the open-ended response as a kind of key indicator of is this a real person. If you can generate a lot of that stuff using AI, that creates a big problem for the panel companies to filter out the fraudulent stuff. There are tools that are supposedly able to detect AI generated content. Don't know whether this is really going to be effective just yet. Question Pro again have started to try and implement this. Finally, right, explainability. One of the issues here is you just get an answer. You don't get any sorting. You don't get, how that came to a result. So there's going to need to be a lot of work in explainability. Ignore that because that's kind of a bit old. But the need to attribute sources to figure out where things have come from is going to be really important in our line of work because you can't just take things at face value. Right, we did it. 30 minutes. Wow. 10 stages. 3 big risks, and that was it. I'm sorry, you can watch a slower version of this on Insight Platforms website if you want. I hope that wasn't overwhelming.
So good, Mike. Thank you so much. It was whistle stop, but that was the brief, wasn't it? So thank you so much. Has anybody got any questions?
I can stick around. I mean, if people want to stick around, I don't mind, but
Mike, there's some questions in the chat.
yeah, Tom, I'm just trying to read Tom's. What are you saying, Tom? Right, is there any text find that can automate interpretation? I think, Tom, you're asking, is there anybody who can do the analysis and interpretation of interview transcripts? Well, I mean, to be honest, you're going to have a play around with things like Yabble, those summarization tools, and see how good they are. Because I can't vouch for how good they are. I've not used them on a live project. You know, the proof is in the pudding. So I think there's some stuff definitely coming down the line, but it really needs to be validated. Good. Dan, thank you. If you missed the start, you missed the bit where I was talking about your course, maybe, because it really is good for anybody who wants to learn how to do insight synthesis. Dan did a great course this week. Okay. Any other questions? Can you, from your experience, assign a percentage accuracy to each of the 10 pros and threes? No, Paul, I can't. I can't give it accuracy because I think they're more sort of broad use cases. You can use them for hypothesis building. And it depends what the thing is. Some of the stuff on the bullshit answers is a lot of it is in things like kind of maths things or things like that, things that are more recent because the model's trained on older data. So there's all sorts of ways in which that's risky. Tequila tonic, right? Nice one. Good. Okay, I think these are mostly comments rather than questions.
Yeah.
Who do you think is most interesting in using it at the moment? That's a good question, actually. Who's most interested in using this stuff at the moment? I mean, I think it's being quite widely adopted in digital marketing. And that is people using them to generate copy for blog articles and or ad campaigns and things like that. My worry is that this just becomes like the magic porridge pot that people are like, oh look, we've generated 50 blog articles, we've generated 500 blog articles, and there's just so much that we just fill the internet with more and more crap. So I think that's kind of a risk. But in research, to be honest, it's kind of tentative steps. It's early days. I think if it were me, the most useful stuff is about that structuring, creating a framework for a document. So it could be a proposal, a report, whatever it is. So generate some kind of headings just to get yourself started. The second use case is generating copy when you've just got that complete like, I just can't write anything and I can't think straight. It's like, write me an introduction to a proposal for blah blah, write to a report, whatever, and then at least you've got something. You go, well, that's rubbish. Take out 90% of it, but at least it's a start. The third thing is about hypothesis stuff. So I think generate 10 ideas for what might be barriers to adoption in this category or whatever that is.
There's two more questions I think we'll take, and then we'll.
How far was technology from cracking explainability? Actually, not that far, to be honest. It's being able to explain and attribute sources is a kind of deal breaker for a lot of use cases. So it is there in, I think, u.com has got like a chat model there, and I think that is much more attributable. So it's where's the sources come from for the answers. So have a look at that, u.com. U.com, like that. And the best tool for generating copy. Do you know what? I actually don't know. There's a load of them. Jasper's the kind of biggest and well funded, but I found the stuff in Notion AI, which is a waitlist beta thing, so you can't just turn it on, I'm afraid. But it's I found it actually pretty good. But they all still use the same underlying models. So what will be interesting is the people who are building products and applications, how they tweak them for specific industries or use cases. So there's a lot of stuff that's quite generic. It's geared toward digital marketing and blog copy. People will be building more niche tools that are more specific for, qual research or for kind of, industry vertical stuff.
There's one final comment, which is about Paul's sister says they're really concerned slightly to use it.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? I think it's not surprising because the whole paradigm is go away, write some stuff, submit it, and get marked on it. That's the education paradigm. And it's like, well, okay, but if that's no longer how we appraise people or how we get people to learn, it's going to take a few years to adapt that. So I can understand the anxiety because that's the method that we've got right now. But the long term, are these tools that are actually useful? Same way that teachers freak out about mobile phones and the way kids communicate. The way kids communicate is fantastically creative, and it just they get threatened by it because it's new and it's different, and it's it's easy to kind of feel like it's a bad thing. But I think we're all going to have to adapt.
Thank you. I'll circulate the recording so people can have a listen back, and those that couldn't join can have a listen. So thank you so much, Mike, for your time to do this.
Great. Okay. And if you do want to see some stuff next week, the demo days is there. The courses that we're putting together in the academy, I'd love for some feedback or if there's any referrals, then would be gratefully received. So
yeah.
All right.
We're happy to promote that when we send out the recording as well, Mike.
Super.
So, thank you to everybody that's remaining on the call, and see you at our next session, hopefully. Thanks a lot. Have a good rest of the day.
Cheers, everyone. Thanks a lot. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.